Hey Robot fans, welcome back to the build. Last time we got the chest and the back all set up, and today is going to be all about the radio. Roger, roger.
If we take a look at the costume reference library for Commander Bao, we can see this radio pack which rests on the back armor. The C.R.L. model for Commander Bao is Master Clone Builder Commander Gatz. Lucky for me, Gatz has been really guiding me on this build and his knowledge is unmatched. He sent me measurements of his radio pack, which I figured would be a wham bam, make a 3D model and print it out kind of thing. But is anything ever that easy with these clones? No, it is not. Gatz's armor is from DW Designs. I am using armor from Imperial Surplus. Different builders, different measurements, and the back plates which the radio box lines up on are not the same. It's crucial that the radio pack hits the four corners of the armor perfectly, so we'll need to make some adjustments. I began to measure my own kit and was greeted with a second hiccup. The top contour of the backplate is longer than the bottom contour of the backplate. The radio box is supposed to be pretty squared off, so we have some decisions to make. I can make the front face of the radio taper down, I guess, but that looks kind of crappy and I think it would be pretty noticeable. My other option is to make the front face of the radio box squared off and rectangular like it should be, and make the back face of the radio match the uneven contours of the top and bottom. Then I can have the sides taper in between those two faces. This way, if you're looking at the front face of the radio, you see something nice and square, and if you're looking at where the radio meets the back plate, all of those four corners will still be hitting like they should be. I think the transition between the squared off front face and the tapered back face would be pretty unnoticeable to the casual viewer and definitely less noticeable than a tapered front face. I printed this test block to see if this works visually, and it does. The corners hit the corners and the front face is nice and squared off. If we look at this piece a little closer, we can start to see the distortion in the box, but once all the greeblies are added on and the weathering is in there to break up these planes, this will be even less noticeable. I took this concept back into my 3D program and started to build out our modified shape with our modified Gatz dimensions into a radio box built off the visual reference of the C.R.L. I managed to consolidate this whole model down to 3 main structural parts and a couple of detail pieces. I printed the top section here to be a little beefier since it's the main mounting point for the radio, and kept the rest of the parts pretty light and more decorative. This frame piece attaches to the bottom via some screws and glue, and then the front face glues over top of all of that. The only mildly tricky part is the way this mounts to the armor. I don't want this to be a permanently installed piece of my kit, so I made 2 circular recesses where I will be housing 2 N52 magnets. I glued them both into place and then glued a cover on top to clean it up a little. Next, I did my usual finishing process to get rid of all of the seams and painted it to a nice flat white. To see more about this finishing and painting process, check out my arms video or my helmet painting video. The next part's the trickiest. If we look at the C.R.L, we can see that the radio has this bar greebly that comes off of the front face and goes around the corner to the side. So I bought this hollow brass tubing and this brass tubing bender in hopes of bending this tube to make our bar greebly, but despite what the Amazon description said, this does not fit into the bender. So that is very disappointing. However, the bender itself came with these 4 practice rods, and it just so happens that these rods fit inside of the one that I purchased. So I think we can improvise something here. So I took those 4 practice pieces and using my newest and bluest favorite tool ever, I bent them all to 90 degrees. This bender thing worked surprisingly well, so I probably didn't need that blowtorch, but you know, I'm still going to use it. So then what I'm basically going to do is just use those 90-degree angle pieces, insert it into the bigger piece to make my rails. Then I can just cut this longer piece to length and just keep inserting the 90-degree angles as needed. I only need 3 of them and I have 4 to work with, so that should work out pretty well. Plus it'll give me like a cool little corner detail. There's going to be another one of the thicker pieces here, so that'll give me like a nice recessed or inset corner, I guess, which could look cool also. So this is going to work out great. Then after a bit of measuring and making some simple cuts throughout the brass, these pieces interlocked really nicely to make a pretty cool looking rail that fits really awesomely onto the radio. I gotta say, all's well that ends well. I'm pretty happy that original rail was too big because these little corner details are awesome and they were totally unplanned. Thanks, Amazon. Lastly, I painted the brass rod white to match the rest of the box and I glued it into place. There are 4 knobs on the radio box, and these holes that I printed in the box allow for these rotary encoders to be installed. The rotary encoders will allow for a nice mounting structure as well as some sweet knob turning action. With our encoders installed, I glued on our penultimate set of plastic greeblies. These two little plastic clips glue onto the sides of the box right above the line of the brass rod. The last bit are these two L-shaped faces that glue into the top boxes. Before I glue those in, I want to give myself a little leg up on the weathering and get this whole surface nice and dirty. Then I glued in those two plastic plates and continued on with my usual weathering style, which we've been using throughout the build. I added in all my usual dry brush vignetting and GAT-style battle marks. When things are sufficiently dirty, I can do my final install of the knobs and the antenna. For the knobs, I bought these 3 heptagonal knurled knobs from DigiKey for the front face. I painted them straight black to hide the top silver face and the indicator on the sides, and then installed them onto the D shaft of the rotary encoder. For the top knob, I had a real hard time finding something that fit into this space with the overall dimensions that I wanted, so I just 3D printed a custom little heptagonal knurled knob to go in its place. I even printed in a D shaft so we can use the rotary encoder functionality. Next we have the antenna. I bought this scanner antenna from eBay. I cut it down to about 9 inches from the base to the tip and sprayed the stem silver with some Rust-Oleum spray paint. I installed it into the hole next to the top knob with some Bob Smith CLA glue. Lastly, I tied it all together with some Thuntonian airbrushing that I love so much. From its humble beginnings as one of my roughest and sloppiest 3D prints ever, this radio box has really come a country mile. I'm really happy with the contrast, the knobs, and the antenna add, and I think I kept the weight light enough to make it not too intrusive on my back plate. Along those lines, mounting this onto the back is pretty simple. I roughly placed the radio box and then snapped the 2 matching magnets in place on the back. Since the magnets aren't fixed into place yet, I can still adjust it and make some fine-tuning of the position of the radio box. When that was done, I marked the outside faces of each magnet and made a matching mark on the armor, and then I traced the outline of each magnet. I individually took the magnets off and tried to glue it into place while checking the position of the pack as I went. While I do trust the super glue gods, a fellow builder recently told me of some magnets in his build becoming detached, so I'm going to try to avoid that whole potentiality by printing some magnet covers. These ABS covers will be solvent welded onto the backplate armor over the magnets for an extra layer of adhesive protection. Partially suited up now, we can see the radio pack in place. The hold is really nice, and the only real bummer here is not being able to see my backplate anymore. But hey, us clones gotta be able to communicate, right? Alright, that's going to do it for this video. Thanks for tuning in. I'm really happy with the way this radio box came out. I think it looks awesome, and it's nice and secure on there. It's definitely not going to fall off. If you have a set of Imperial surplus armor and you want to make a radio box just like this, mention it below in the comments and I'll happily upload all of the 3D files for this particular box here and tell you where to get all the extra little parts. A huge thank you to Commander Gats for once again giving me a huge head start on this part of the build and guiding me through everything. I think I have everything that I need now for the belt, so that will be the next segment of this series, getting that belt installed. That's kind of the last piece of the main armor parts, so that's going to be pretty exciting. Stay tuned for that one. Don't forget to like and subscribe. As always, we are going to finish with a progression shot, and I will see you guys next time.